This beer is funky, dank, sticky, icky, overly ripe fruit, but in a delicious way.
Yeah,
I love this beer.
There is so many fruit characters in there.
All right, you ready?
Yeah, I'm full of banh mi. I'm ready to go.
Oh, yeah? I did not eat enough today. What's going on, everybody? It's Chip Walton, and
William Richards.
we are in beautiful Northern Brewer World Headquarters in Roseville, here for a most epic side-by-side tasting notes video to see what Omega Yeast's new Thiolized series of yeast strains does to one of our most popular beer kits, the Swig of Sunbeams. And spoiler alert,
it's a big difference.
There's a big difference. All four of these yeast strains do very different things to the kit, which is partly why we chose it to be the first release in our Thiolized series beer kit. So we're going to walk you real quick through the brew day. We're going to go from grain to glass, essentially. All grain version, pretty big brew day. We're going to walk through fermentation, dry hopping, and then we'll come back here to compare and contrast the control batch of Swig of Sunbeams against its 4 thiolized cousins. Before we dig in, if you like these kinds of brew day and tasting notes videos, we sure like making them. Show us some love, like this video, subscribe to Northern Brewer's YouTube channel, share the video with any of your homebrew friends, especially anyone curious about the hot topic of thiols. Speaking of the hot topic of thiols, if this is someone's first introduction to the concept at all, give me a real quick breakdown of what we're even talking about here.
Yeah, thiols are just bound flavor and aroma compounds that traditional brewers' yeast don't have access to, so in the finished product, we can't taste them, we can't perceive them. So most of them with the new Omega strains, that releases it so that we can taste and smell them. And most of them are aromas of tropical fruit, Sauvignon Blanc, just a lot of fruitiness to them.
We should note that these precursors are in malt and hops.
Yep, malt and hops, and newer studies are showing more in malt than hops, which is, I think, surprising everybody. So
yeah, because when it first kind of hit the scene, we were like, change your hop profile by doing this thing. We were like, well, actually, just change your flavor profile of all your ingredients. So these yeasts unlock those thiols.
Snap into a thiol.
Snap into a thiol. So let's see how all of this works, starting with brew day and fermentation. The brew day here was actually sort of a big deal in our brew cave, as our R&D brewer Brad Siegel had to bust out the big guns for this 20-gallon brew. 30-gallon mash tun, 20-gallon boil kettle, nearly 60 pounds of grain total. The grist for the regular Swig of Sunbeams recipe kit includes raw 2-row as the base malt, a decent amount of both Weyermann Barca Vienna malt and flaked oats, plus just a little bit of Briess Carapils and Simpson medium crystal malt. Brad mashed in this large amount of malt in a few additions and hit the mash temperature of 152 degrees spot on. Mash time was 1 hour, kind of typical. He set up his go-to mash recirculation system per usual, and the wort achieved the expected golden to light bronze hue, sparged and ran off that 20 plus gallons into the boil kettle. With this boil being this big and all of the proteins in the mix from these flaked oats, we definitely wanted to dose it with firm cap in effort to make sure we avoided the dreaded boil over in this big brew kettle, which we did. Once boiling, Swig of Sunbeams gets the equivalent of 1 ounce per 5 gallons of Columbus hops for bittering for 60 minutes. Obviously here everything is scaled up by 4, so 4 ounces in this brew. 15 minutes before the end of boil, a 1 ounce equivalent of Citra per 5 gallons. At 10 minutes, the wort's hit with 1 pound of corn sugar per 5 gallons just to kind of get that gravity up, help fermentability. Then, after the boil is complete, flame out, and Brad used a counterflow chiller to cool the wort to about 170 degrees, and he held it there for a 10-minute hop stand, steeping 4 ounces per 5 gallons. So as you can see, 16 ounces total here of Citra hops. That's a pound. If you don't know, Europeans, I'm looking at you. 16 ounces is a pound. At this point, the brew cave was obviously smelling really good, so good that even our resident wild turkeys of Roseville showed up to get a whiff. After the whirlpool, he cooled the wort to yeast pitching temperature and broke it into 4 5-gallon fermenters. 3 of those big mouth bubblers, one of them a Northern Brewer reactor conical fermenter. Original gravity across the board was 1074, which is spot on for the recipe. Each batch got one of the Omega Thiolized Series yeast. First batch got Cosmic Punch Ale, the second got Helio Gazer Ale, third got Star Party Ale, and the fourth got Lunar Crush Lager. The ales were all fermented at 66 degrees, and the lager version was fermented at 52. As you can see, these fermentations went absolutely bonkers. Even with firm cap in the boil and at yeast pitch, the Kreuzen here just still raged out of control, blew out the airlocks. Brad actually had to change the airlocks twice during fermentation because it was such an aggressive ferment. Then he dry hopped the beers during the second half of active fermentation with 2 ounces of Citra per each 5 gallons. So needless to say, this beer has a lot of hops throughout the brew and fermentation process. Whew, so that was a lot of talking about a brew day. So after fermentation, conditioning, and kegging, we ended up with 5 beers. Actually, because we did a control batch a couple of days later because we're like, oh wait, there's nothing to compare these to. So we ran a couple of taste panels, semi-blind, I would say, with some coworkers, had it on tap, got some informal feedback from other coworkers, and William and I are here to share with you the results. And again, as we said at the beginning, they are very different beers. Let's start with the original, the OG, the Swig of Sunbeams, which when you buy the kit non-thiolized, comes with West Coast Ale 1.
Yep.
Cheers. Double IPA. You get a little malt, big malt foundation, little sweet booziness.
Firm bitterness to back that all up, though, too.
Yep. Little toasty. This kit is not worlds away from a tropical kind of noted hop bomb. But as you'll see, kind of twist those tropical notes, but it's already in this beer, right?
Yes. Yep. Very much so.
But a fairly still straightforward double IPA. As straightforward as a double IPA can be.
Yeah, and kind of dangerously drinkable for the. I mean, it's not super high, but 7+% and easy drinking.
Oh, for sure. Like all of these, a through line of these, at least to me, are that they're very crushable.
Yeah.
Even though you can get the booze, it's not often off-putting enough to like slow you down.
Yeah. Is it ever?
Yeah. So batch number 2 has Cosmic Punch. So Cosmic Punch Ale has been out for a minute. It's kind of the first of the thiolized. It's a thiolized version of Omega's British Ale 5, which is often what we recommend for like hazy IPAs. So what we're saying here, once again, is there's a parent strain that Omega has kind of bioengineered and nudged into a different direction to unlock these thiols. So Cosmic Punch. What do you think, William?
I think, I mean, spoiler alert, but I think this is one of the ones closest to the original. I get a lot of that maltiness that carries through from the control, but then there's more tropical fruit in there. I get quite a bit more like passion fruit, guava in the aroma. Flavor, I start to get a little bit more of like a white grape type of character, maybe white wine, something like that. Interesting enough to me, I get a lot of like orange marmalade too, which I love in any kind of IPA. So it's a nice change up. I think it helps balance the tropical characters to it quite a bit.
A lot of people noted it leans maltier out of these 4. So it's kind of the one, I would say, if you want to just put a little twist, a little percentage difference in your vibe, like maybe Cosmic Punch would be what you reach for this kit.
Yeah, especially if you have like a house IPA that you brew a lot or a style you're familiar with and you brew it a lot, that might be a fun one to try just to see the slight difference before you go to the deep end with some of these other ones.
So batch number 3, Helio Gazer. Omega says Helio Gazer is like Cosmic Punch on steroids. They're from the same parental strain, British Ale 5, but Helio literally has like hundreds-fold more thiol unlocking potential. Like Cosmic Punch version, which I failed to mention just then, these both got to 1016. And you can see how this strain really is just a bigger, badder version of Cosmic Punch, right?
Yep.
It's kind of punching a little bit more of that orangey.
Yeah, and all these strains use a enzyme to help free up those thiols, and they're different enzymes in these too. So it's the same parental strain, but this is a different enzyme.
Okay, I feel here we're getting into like passion fruit guava. We're not getting nearly as funky as one of these other ones that I won't give it away yet, but we're getting into that more, almost kind of like tart, funky side of like an overripe tropical
Yeah.
fruit.
You start to get a little bit of like dank diesel. Like there's some dankness to that one, I think, too, that's in the background behind all that tropical fruit.
I like when you say diesel. I don't, it sounds off-putting, but it's something that I get a lot. And I'm like, oh, that's
So
that thing.
yeah, kind of a sweet, dank aroma. It's hard to describe, but I don't, I'm one of those weirdos that think gasoline kind of has a nice smell and diesel. I don't know.
You noted guava, Sauv Blanc was where we start getting kind of like deeper into white grape a little, right?
Yeah, so I get that more in the flavor than the aroma, and I started picking up the Sauv Blanc. I think that's where some of the danky, diesely things also are playing in on that Sauv Blanc character for sure.
Is it almost kind of sulfury, but in a pleasant way? Or is those two different things?
No, I would say so. It's so low level that it's just kind of mixing with the fruit. Like with a nice traditional Pilsner, if you have a low enough level, it brings up that almost mineral character to it, which can be pretty nice.
Yeah. Our fourth sample is fermented with Star Party Ale. This is a thiolized version of the parent strain West Coast Ale 1. So basically a thiolized version of our control group batch, aka the regular recipe, which is why it's kind of no surprise that it also got down to 1010, which the original did.
Yeah, again, for this one, at least for me in the flavor, I get the maltiness again as part of the aroma, whereas like Helio Gazer, that maltiness takes a back seat, and you really get more of that tropical fruit and all that stuff going on. I do get, lighter tropical aroma with some maltiness in the background, but it's not like the last one we had where it's just definitely tropical fruit right out of the gate all over.
The malty, it's almost like salty. One of the things I learned working at Summit is like there's a degree of saltiness to every beer, which I never heard of before. And I don't know if it's more of an essence or perception, but Rebecca Newman was always like, what's the saltiness? And you're like, well, crap, if it's a Goza is the only time you think of it. But like this has that, it's a drying, minerally, almost I'd attribute it to maybe even being just kind of more bitter than flavorful, whether that's malty or hoppy.
Yeah, I could see that. It's kind of the bitterness and the malt playing together almost. Yeah, that makes sense.
It is a little crackery kind of malt vibe. Buttered toast, but not butter as in diacetyl, just the salt.
Again, with the flavor, you get kind of that tropical fruit, a little bit of the grape juice. To me, it kind of similar in flavor to Cosmic Punch. They're different.
Right.
I'd group these Cosmic Punch and Star Party closer together to the Control, and then Helio and spoiler Lunar Crush to be a little bit more outliers.
Yeah. It should be noted that Cosmic and Helio were hazier earlier on. These have been on keg now for, I don't know, a few weeks. Out of the gate, they were noticeably more of like, oh, that's kind of a hazy. None of them were ever hazy because
New England haze at all, for sure. But even now, they're still. I'm sure it's too subtle for the camera to pick up, but you can still see that they're a little bit hazy compared to the other three.
So last but certainly not least, our only lager entry in this side by side Swig of Sunbeams fermented with Lunar Crush Lager, which is a thiolized version of Omega's Mexican lager strain, FG 1016. And this beer is freaking so different than one of these things is not like the other. One of these things does not belong. Yeah. And this is it. This beer is funky, dank, sticky, icky, overly ripe fruit, but in a delicious way.
Yeah,
I love this beer.
There is so many fruit characters in there, all across the board. Tropical fruit. There's like some pear in there, almost like a palm fruit in a nice way. Again, dank. It's just like so many.
Yeah, it almost tingles the tongue. Not necessarily in a mouthfeel way as much as like carbonation. It's just like there's so much happening.
Yeah.
It's like literally an explosion of flavors.
Yeah, and I mean every drink you get a different layer because you're like, okay, I got that. Oh, what is this now?
Yeah.
And it keeps evolving almost. Like you were just saying, they've been in the keg for a while. It's even changed a little bit, just lagering in that keg.
Yeah, I feel like it was funkier right out of the gate. When we did our first panel, you could see everybody at the table, like you knew when they were having that sample, they were just like,
but
whoa.
We should say not funky like Brett or anything. It's just like really super ripe fruit. You get that.
Almost kind of musty, BO-ish in a pleasant way.
Yeah, like hippie chick armpit. That's what I go with. Like,
if you know the official terminology for hippie chick armpit, Because I know exactly what you're saying. It's like gym room, like a boys' locker room meets
some fruit
some
and
weed,
yeah,
I think,
yeah,
which the two might not be mutually exclusive anyway.
yeah, yep.
But so you were so impressed with this that you immediately pretty much went home and like brewed something with Lunar Crush using some other information that's kind of
Yes.
come to light on how to use these strains.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, we probably tasted on a Wednesday, and that Friday I was brewing with it because I was pretty excited just from that characteristic that was in there. I love that hippie chick armpit that I describe it as. Another thing I kind of described it as, like, I also got diesel out of this, almost to the point where you get that clumped on grassy stuff on your lawnmower, but again, not in like a rotty vegetable way, just kind of like a sweet, I don't know. I like weird stuff, I guess. But it excited me. So yeah, with some of the new information that Lance shared with us, I went home and did a mash hop. So I used just mash hops with it, and Pilsner malt. And the mash hops I used, I had some fresh hops off my hop vine. So it was a wet hop mash hop beer, 100%. 2 pounds of wet hops for a 5-gallon batch. It was a new experience, I will say. But that beer's just about finished up fermentation, so hopefully we'll be trying that pretty soon too. But
he brought in a jar of from the fermenter, and like I immediately recognized like a 10% kind of version of this foam. Mm-hmm. So it's probably to say that one might never get there because it is just the mash hop. It's not all these other elements, lower alcohol.
We were talking about it. I said I'd probably, once it drops clear, I'll probably actually want to just dry hop that to give it a little bit more depth of character. It's a little, probably not bitter enough too, because when you're doing all mash hopping, it's a different equation for bitterness. So, and using your own homegrown hops is kind of a little window. You don't know what's in there too.
More unknowns.
Yep.
So what would you say is the takeaway from these 5 beers born from the same wort, essentially?
Again, it's crazy how different they are. I mean, that's what our hope was, and that's how it came out, and that's super cool.
Yeah.
Helio and Lunar are the ones that have the most, thiols in it. They're both just tons of tropical fruit and everything. The other two are more, if you're looking to just get more of a slight tropical note or fruitiness, not even slight, but just tropical notes to an IPA or a pale or something. Those would be really nice without going too far into the deep end, I think, where you still get some of that malt character.
Yeah.
If you're just looking for fruit, at least from the tests we've done, these are going to be the two that are really going to set you apart more than anything.
Again, with the information kind of ongoing as pro brewers give their feedback to Omega, and we give. One of the things that also has been called out is that whirlpooling might actually be a little disadvantageous to the thiol unlocking, right?
Yep, and Lance from Omega specifically called out Cosmic Punch, which is one that we all said was more malt forward and with lower thiols. So it seems to line up that way with the amount of whirlpool hops that we did do in this kit. But then again, this is still one I'd crush more often.
Yeah, I would suggest get 2 kits. Or get one and split it. But I think the point of these strains is really to like see what the control does versus one of the thiolized, so that you can kind of understand what's getting opened up, what flavors kind of get evolved. Mm-hmm. But I would say if I was going to brew just one to have on, my favorite is Lunar Crush. And a lot of people's did, and that could be maybe like novelty bias as we talked about earlier, but it just popped out. It seemed almost like IPL from another planet,
and that's one of the styles they call out for that too. So,
which one you like the most? Right, you liked B.
I love
Helio?
I love the characteristics in C. B, I gave it a lot of good characteristics, but that's not the flavors I like in beer per se. I don't like a lot of that stuff. So I'd actually, if I'm gonna drink a pale ale or an IPA, I'd probably prefer A or D.
So he's saying Cosmic or Star.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, we started calling everything letters. So Cosmic or Star Party. Helio Gazer.
Yeah, Helio, if you're a huge fan of New England IPAs and that really ripe fruit that you can get in those, I think that's a really good choice for those, though, too. And Lunar Crush is just something fun to play with. I don't like IPL.
Cold IPA, trying that maybe at a warmer temp even.
Yeah.
So, A, Thiolized Swig of Sunbeams. Choose your own adventure by picking one of these 4 strains. B, if you just get these strains on their own, some of what we've learned since putting this out as our first kit is Lance Shaner at Omega actually says that their research, is ongoing, but is starting to show signs that mash hops are really, that's kind of where you want to use those hops in order to kind of unlock the thiols. Adding a lot of hops throughout may not be beneficial. So this, you could argue this might be a weird first kit, but I still think our results prove that like it's a delicious kind of exploration. But yeah, like go simple. Do like a smash and put all your hops in the mash. Do a Pils malt. Just
and he calls out simple hops too, not
That's right.
Not expensive new hops. Cascade Zotz was a big one that he
Zotz,
hit,
which would be one where if you did a smash beer with Zotz and you split it, you're definitely going to see like, oh, is this a continental lager or is this a Martian hop bomb of tropic goodness?
Yep.
So either way, all of that's available at northernbrewer.com. The Thiolized series of Omega yeast strains, the Thiolized series of beer kits that we'll be continuing to work on. It's just fun. It's a different, we are in the new frontier.
Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, sometimes brewing gets a little stale, and this is a new tool, new thing to look at and play with. I'm lost at where I should go from this.
What do I do with my hands? What do I do with my hands? You drink a beer is what you do.
Lunar Crush, man.